Are you surprised as I am and disgusted that this race is as close as it is? You have a guy that's a 34 count felon, a liable sexual abuser. The list goes on with his behavior, his criminality. How is this race so close?
I gotta say, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. But also, I think it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors too. And when I say that, I mean I've heard that the Republicans have flooded the zone as recently as like the beginning of October. So they dropped a bunch of Republican weighted polls to make it to make it seem as though Donald Trump is doing way better than he actually is. With that said, we're still, at the end of the day, we're still in a virtual tie. And I don't know if maybe they're not capturing the youth, because those youth are kind of very energized. They're activated, and they tend to not answer landline phones, which is what a lot of these polling organizations do. They call the
That's true.
landline phones in the
Yep.
middle of the day. The young kids, they consider it rude if you call them. I don't know if you know that. Like, well, you're kind of young yourself.
I
What
consider it
was
rude, but I'm old. I'm 44. But yeah,
what?
that's a really good point though with what you just said. They're not really reaching out to the younger groups. It's usually, and we know, let's just call it for what it is. And I say this all the time: the overwhelming majority of Donald Trump supporters are middle-aged, older, uneducated white people. Let's just call it for what it is. That's just what it is, right?
Yeah, and here's another thing. I feel like they're also not capturing a lot of excuse me, a lot of Republicans who have switched sides. And if be it for only temporary, they have switched sides just for the purpose of this interview. And I'm not saying that they're as extremely conservative Republican as, let's say, Darth Vader, Dick Cheney, or his daughter, but they're somewhere in the spectrum of, I'm pro-life and small government, but I don't like a crazy dictator, as my president. So there's a lot of people who are just striking like an uneasy truce just this one time, and I don't think a lot of those folks are being captured. What I am seeing is like Kamala Harris, for whatever her faults and her shortcomings may be, in a really short period of time, like 3 months, she's done a remarkable job of first raising $1 billion in 3 months. Donald Trump has been running for president since he left the White House. He has the advantage of all of that cachet. As a vice president, the vice presidents, they don't get any screen time, no attention, unless they misspell the word potato. That's when you hear about a vice president. But so most of America didn't have the benefit of getting to know her unless they were paying attention to the debates in 2020. So she's had to make up a whole lot of ground and cobble together the most insanely diverse coalition of support I have ever seen in my life. The white dudes for Kamala, comedians for Kamala, Republicans, the elderly, all across every walk of life has come out in support of her.
Yeah, we didn't have this when Hillary ran. We didn't have this sort of movement, I guess you could call it, when Hillary ran. Yeah, energy is another way of putting it. I want to ask you this question because I mean this sincerely. I mean, Donald Trump's in Las Vegas today, right? I asked Anthony Scaramucci this in the first hour when he came on, and I'll ask you the same question. I believe that if Donald Trump walked out on stage today in a Klan outfit and called Kamala Harris the N-word, he might lose a few votes, but I think the overwhelming majority of his base would still vote for him. I really feel that way.
100% right. In fact, I posted a tweet earlier today. I was saying that, I thought after all of the things that he's said and done over the years, and I'm saying over the years, taking it back to 2015, we can even go back to the thing that really pissed me off about him was how he treated President Obama with that whole birth certificate nonsense. I didn't even count that. But I'm talking about the the Access Hollywood tape, grab him by the pee,
Yep.
um, disrespecting John McCain and mocking the disabled reporter, and all the way down the list. Nothing really took my breath away like hearing that he had said, uh, it doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican.
Yep.
That hit me like a punch in the gut. There was something about that was so vulgar and so ugly on so many different levels, because this is a guy who at the time was the sitting president of the United States, first
Correct.
of all.
Yep.
Secondly, he's addressing someone who had died, right?
Right.
And not just someone, but a veteran, someone who was in our middle, someone who was serving our country, proudly serving our country. And then it was a woman, and then it was a woman of color. So you have all of these, all these different levels. So yeah, it really. I tweeted earlier that this was kind of, to me, I identify as a black man. This was worse than him saying the N-word. I don't think I would be as shocked about him saying the N-word. This
I don't know
really
what it
shocked
takes.
me.
I don't know what Brooklyn Dad defined. I don't know what it takes and what Donald Trump would need to do for some of these MAGA cultists to say, geez, I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris, but I can't support this guy anymore. He's praised Adolf Hitler. You made the comment about the $60,000 funeral. That's how much it costs to bury an effing Mexican. This is a guy who bragged about sexual assault, who's a liable sexual abuser, who's attacked our brave men and women in uniform like John McCain. I don't respect him because he was captured. He's a 34-count felon. So if this video comes out, and listen, I don't know if this alleged video even exists, but if this video comes out of him allegedly groping a young teenage underage girl, I don't think that's going to make a difference. I really don't. Yeah,
it won't. We're already aware that he had a fixation on his daughter. We were already aware that he's made comments about, that what was it, 10 or 12-year-old girl on the escalator. I'll be dating her,
Right.
And all of the other so-called unsubstantiated stories about like that Katie Johnson girl, the one who I guess she withdrew her lawsuit or something. And on and on and on. There are dozens of women who have stepped forward with credible accounts. Who, so it would just be one more that the MAGA crowd would threaten, and they would blame her, victim blame her, and call it a hoax and fake news. So yeah,
I'm curious.
It's really sad.
It is. I'm curious. You have an enormous following, and I definitely want to talk to you about that. But with the following that you have, and you speak for a lot of people that don't have the platform that you have. If you were in a private room with Donald Trump, I'm curious, what would you say to him?
I would say you are a disgrace. You're a disgrace not only to New Yorkers. We despise you in New York, but you're a disgrace to Americans. You're a disgrace to humanity. You might act as though you are, unhinged and deranged or whatever, but I think you actually know better. I think you know better, and you choose to act the other way. I think your behavior is abysmal. You have opened the floodgates to give permission to, as you call them, the uneducated, the poorly educated, and you've given them permission to be their worst person. And, as a leader of the country, and you're not the president, but you are the main leader of a major political party. People look up to you, and you are expected, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not, you are expected to uphold a certain standard of conduct. Look at all of your predecessors. Look at Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, who built houses for Habitat for Humanity.
Right.
Look at what he did. Even for crying out loud, look at George W. Bush, he was probably the worst president until you came along. But he's quietly shuffled off and doing his paint by numbers thing or whatever. He's not bothering anybody, but he's
Are you
not
surprised though that
threatening.
he hasn't come forward? A lot of people are begging him to come forward and support Kamala Harris, or at least speak out against Trump. He's been silent. Nothing from George W. Bush. You got Dick Cheney that's come forward. Of course, her daughter. So many Republicans with courage, I think is the word I would use. Whether it be a Jeff Duncan, whether it be Joe Walsh does this show all the time. I love Joe. We just had the Mooch on. So many prominent Republicans that spoke at the DNC that worked in Trump's administration, the Stephanie Grishams, those kinds of people. And I commend all of them, by the way, because it's not an easy. At least Mike Pence has come out and said, "I'm not supporting Trump." I mean, that's something. I'm sure we both don't have a ton of respect for Mike Pence, but at least he did that. George W. Bush sitting at home doing nothing, my friend, nothing.